Hello, everybody, and welcome to this KFTV talk about the United Arab Emirates, sponsored by Boomtown Productions. I'm Chris Evans, the locations editor for KFTV. Today, we have gathered some leading production experts to discuss all that the UAE has to offer as a filming location and their experiences filming there. Before we start, a few bits of housekeeping. I will moderate a 30-minute discussion with our panelists before we open it up to questions from you, our live audience. If you have questions, please use the Q&A button in Zoom. My colleague Jackie is helping to moderate today's panel. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. Right, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have Hans Freken, Abu Dhabi Film Commissioner. Hans joined the Abu Dhabi Film Commission in June 2020, following a 25-year global career in film distribution, co-production and financing. As Commissioner, Hans is responsible for developing a world-class production centre and film-friendly community in Abu Dhabi, capable of supporting productions from around the world. We also have Shane Martin, CEO, Executive Producer and Commercials Director at Boomtown Productions. Shane founded Boomtown in London in 1999, opening Boomtown in Dubai in 2002. He's been working in the Middle East market since 1985, creating some of the first commercials ever broadcast in the region, and has been at the forefront of developing production industry in the region. Matteo Granziol, Location Manager at F-Stop Location Services. Matteo is responsible for the location management and scout division, covering a variety of formats, including TVCs, feature films, documentaries, and stills photography throughout the 7 Emirates. And finally, we have Ben Porter, a producer at Ridley Scott Associates in the UK. Ben is a producer and production manager at RSA Films, founded by Ridley and Tony Scott. He's been at the company for 15 years and is involved in many aspects of the business's multi-format output, including branded content and commercials, music videos, shorts, and feature films. So let's kick off with some questions. Can you start by telling me a bit about the current situation in the UAE in terms of COVID cases and requirements for entering the region and how that varies from one emirate to the other? Hans, do you want to kick us off on that front?
Sure, thanks, Chris. You know, first of all, I think we should start by saying that the UAE was one of the few places in the world that was allowed to continue production during the pandemic. And, you know, that wasn't by happenstance. The government, you know, both the federal and Emirati governments were so quick in reacting and, getting this thing before it got out of control with testing, tech innovation, vaccination. I mean, you know, 13 months ago, remember, we didn't know what hit us. It really came like a tidal wave. And you know, before we knew it, they had testing stations all over the place, and you know, we didn't even know what COVID testing was. And so the result was they managed to keep the pandemic in the UAE in check, and you know, we managed to continue production during the whole time. We've had the second lowest infection rate per capita of any place in the world. And that's a record, you know, and the protocols have been very strict, but people understand that it's it's a small price to pay for the safety that they enjoy and the peace of mind when they come and work and film in Abu Dhabi and all the Emirates.
And what about getting to the country, to the region itself, particularly Abu Dhabi? I mean, in terms of travel from other countries, is it straightforward? Is there quarantining? What's the process?
It depends on the country. There's now 23 countries in the green list, including Australia and the UK. Those lists are being, you know, they modify every day depending on what the pandemic situation is like in the countries of departure. For the countries on the red list, the quarantine regulations are different per emirate. So in Dubai, it's a lot more relaxed than in Abu Dhabi, where in Abu Dhabi, if you're not from one of those green listed countries, there is a 10-day quarantine. However, for the film production industry is one of these sectors where we do manage to get exemptions if the inbound crew and production team respects certain protocols that we put in place in advance that are communicated. And so that involves testing just before they leave, testing on arrival, and working within confined bubbles for the first 10 days.
Okay, and Shane, can you elaborate a little further on the situation in Dubai at the moment?
Yeah, well, Dubai is a little bit got a slightly different approach. It's a bit more open, a little less maybe cautious, but you know, for economic reasons, that's the path that they've chosen. In Dubai at the moment, the main requirement is that you have a PCR test on arrival. Wait until you get a negative result, and then you're, you know, within 12 hours or so, and you're free to go. That is, with the exception of countries which are undergoing, you know, the horrors of COVID, like India at the moment. I think they've just restricted people coming from India. But generally speaking, they're very open and very welcoming to international travel at the moment.
And what about the specific requirements for international productions that shoot in the region? So in terms of the protocols on set, the quarantining of cast and crew, testing on a regular basis, keeping equipment, you know, apart from other people. How does it all work in practice for productions at the moment? Sorry, Shane, kick off, and then Hans, you can come in. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I mean, in Dubai, well, in the UAE generally, we as producers have instituted COVID testing for everybody, PCR testing for all crew on set, which has to be done, you know, within 24 hours of the shoot days. We're mainly doing commercials in shorter form, you know, 3, 5, 6 day shoots. So then we would have people tested again after 3 days. We have a nurse on set, temperature checks, social distancing, and you know, sanitization. We haven't really been operating bubbles because we haven't been doing productions that have, you know, that have demanded that sort of approach.
Okay, and Hans, do you want to come in there as well?
Yeah, well, whereas in Abu Dhabi, you know, we knew, you know, last spring, you know, when all this started, we had already started prepping for one of the biggest feature films in history. We were going to be shooting 2 big scenes of the new Mission Impossible. And, you know, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of crews. And we were like, you know, how are we going to manage this? And so we put together a protocol, filming protocol with the government and with Paramount, but we still wanted to test the test. And what happened is UFC were looking to continue, you know, the Ultimate Fighting tournaments. And because of what I was explaining early on, the UAE being one of the safest places in the world, we decided to host the last summer's UFC tournament. It was called UFC Fight Island. And so we kind of transposed this COVID protocol in place, Fight Island, with 100 fighters and their teams and crews. And it went off without a hitch. It was, you know, managed to a T. There was not one COVID infection. So we thought, okay, we can, if we can do UFC, we can do Mission. But as Shane was saying, you know, we were very strict about the bubbles. So we had, you know, nearly 300 international crew come in, another 200 local crew. Some days we had up to 1,000 crews on set. And so everybody was put into 5 different hotels, and they could not mix at any time, not even on set. And it was the same for the extras. A few scenes, we had 250 extras. Again, 5 bubbles of 50 extras. They could not mix, stayed in different hotels. And it worked out really well. We didn't get one COVID case.
Well, that is impressive. So the logistics worked out okay, despite the number of crew and traveling from location to location and getting permits, all that sort of worked out relatively smoothly, did it?
It worked out. The result was very smooth, but putting it in place and ensuring that everybody abided by the protocol, that was not smooth. You know, we had dozens of health and safety workers making sure that everybody abided by, you know, the protocols, the testing, the disinfection, the social distancing. You know, nobody could get close to Tom Cruise. You know, the set was like a military drill, and they never wavered.
Fantastic. And Ben and Matteo, can I bring you guys in here as well in terms of filming in the region and your own experiences and how you've sorted out locations? Ben, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. Well, what I do is I produce the majority of what I produce are commercials and branded content films, which are obviously on a more micro level to the size of the operation and the duration of the operation to what Hans has been discussing with the biggest feature films in the world. But but we are on a day-to-day basis, we do the same thing, and we need to adhere to the same health and safety rules and show show exactly the same duty of care to our crew and our production team and our talent as you would on a feature film. So it's really important that wherever we shoot in the world and wherever we're filming, our local teams and our local facility production teams are adhering to those same sort of health and safety rules. I think that in terms of COVID, I think that I think the film industry across the board have been very, very strict and very very, very responsible in the way that we've managed to keep shooting during COVID. And that's really across the board wherever we are in the world. In terms of, I hadn't shot in the UAE during COVID. We shot the last shoot I did was just before, so 2 months before the pandemic. So it's a very different world then, obviously. But I think the UAE is, because of the UAE's sort of socio-political, geopolitical position in the world, I think security has always been a very important factor in the region, and that security, whether it's has been adapted for the health crisis at the moment, and I think that they've been in a good and have dealt with the situation very well because of that. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I mean, was that project you mentioned, was that the one with Chris Hemsworth that you did just before COVID?
That's right. We were shooting a commercial with for Emirates in December 2019. Yeah.
So that was just before COVID, and that was a relatively smooth process in terms of filming there, and a good project to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we shot in Dubai. We shot in the airport in Dubai, airside, which is always it always has challenges. You're shooting in a working environment where safety is of paramount, and we're shooting with a big crew and a big star and a big brand, and we were doing some quite big stunts as well. So it was a very successful project, apart from the fact that a certain virus came along and meant that the campaign has been postponed for about 18 months, I believe.
Oh, right. I was going to ask you actually, Matteo, how has the COVID situation changed the way you work on projects in terms of scouting locations?
Well, in terms of scouting, really it didn't really make a huge difference to me or to my colleagues, scouts and managers. I believe it's a solitary activity most of the time. So, it's just myself and the camera in the car. I just make sure to be always checked. I've had countless tests since the beginning of the pandemic. I would say the main challenges arrive during preparation, when you start discussing the logistics of the shoot and moving big numbers of crew. And in a very curious way, I would say, at the beginning, I thought the pandemic would have meant somehow decreasing the numbers on set. Somehow it was the opposite. So there is the desire of course, keeping the crew down to a minimum. On the other side, there is the necessity of having more people on set, COVID officials, the paramedics, of course, health and safety, less people allowance in vehicles, therefore more vehicles, bigger spaces for all the people, bigger base camps, bigger catering areas, and so on and so forth. And that can become quite tricky. But I would say the UAE government set a very high standards, and the producers in the UAE did an amazing job following these examples. And we are always going towards the same goal altogether. As long as there is this synergy, it seems like it's a very well-oiled machine and is working great at the moment.
Yeah, so extending from that, in terms of the logistics of putting together a project in the current environment, you can all touch on this. Is it easy to transport equipment around and get crew from one place to the other and get permission to shoot and get visas sorted out and take over locations? And I'm talking about across all of the UAE. So Hans, do you want to maybe start on that front in terms of in Abu Dhabi, for example, what it's like filming there and the logistics of doing so?
Yeah, no, I mean, the idea is to make it as simple and seamless as possible. So, even though it is a decentralized federation, just like the United States or Canada, there's no control or borders in terms of the movement of people and equipment from one emirate to the other. As a matter of fact, if you're based in if your production is based in Abu Dhabi, and the crew and equipment that you're renting from Abu Dhabi and using in another emirate is still rebatable. So maybe I should just mention that Abu Dhabi is the only emirate with a film and television rebate, and it's probably the most generous one within a 2,500 kilometer radius, a mile radius around here, which is 30%. So, and it's a very simple rebate. It applies to anything that's spent, labor or equipment or services in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, I was going to come to that actually. Can you just elaborate a little bit further on that incentive, how it works, how international producers can access it, what the process is?
So if you go on our site, and you'll see the site is the last part of my email address, www.film.gov.au. We have the whole rebates rules and guidelines. Basically, you submit the very similar to any other jurisdiction. It offers a tax credit or cash rebate. Your script, your budget, your shooting schedule, and and pretty much any expense that is incurred in Abu Dhabi qualifies, except for above the line. So any crew, any piece of equipment, any service. So if you're booking flights from here, for example, that's rebatable. If you're hiring a camera and you're bringing your camera and 20 local crew to Ras Al Khaimah, which is one of the northern Emirates, it's still rebatable because you're actually consuming, you're incurring the expense in Abu Dhabi, although you might be consuming it in another emirate.
Yeah, and I think important to mention that it applies, and uniquely, I would say, it applies to commercials as well as to features and long form. So it's commercials, episodic TV, branded content, and I think that's quite a unique rebate position.
Yeah, and actually we haven't announced this yet, Shane, but I might as well use this platform to announce that we're now expanding it to music videos as well.
Okay.
Good to know. And Shane, actually, I was going to ask you also about the logistics of filming in Dubai at the moment. Is it quite a straightforward process in terms of taking equipment across from one place to another?
Yeah, it hasn't. It's always been, I mean, logistically quite simple to shoot in Dubai or Abu Dhabi. The only things we have to think about now is making sure everybody gets tested, which adds another layer of expense, obviously, and another layer of complication. And then also, we have had incidents where people have tested positive, 2 nights or a night before the shoot, then you have to replace them. But that is, just dealing with the pandemic. But, from the actual basic logistics of working, I mean, initially at the beginning of the pandemic, we had some issues with accessing some locations. But now, in the same way that you can go to the shopping mall, you can kind of go anywhere as long as you're careful.
Fantastic. And Hans, you mentioned about obviously Mission Impossible. There have been quite a few big projects that have filmed in the UAE in the last couple of years, haven't there? There's like Star Wars, Six Underground. I mean, quite a few of them. How do you support them, and what do you think is drawing them into the UAE? Is it obviously the incentive, but also the locations? You talked to me a bit about some of the big projects that are filmed in the region.
Yeah. Okay. So we have some. Yeah. So Ben was talking about safety. And safety is, if you look at the annual rankings, whether it's Deep Knowledge Group or any of the international rankings, Abu Dhabi and Dubai are consistently two of the safest cities in the world, and that weighs a lot in terms of productions. The second thing is we have one of the biggest film commissions in the world. There's nearly 30 of us in the film commission. And so we don't just, our role is not just to tell, foreign producer, well, here, meet local line producer, service production company, and good luck. We hold their hand, we hold both our hands the whole journey. So the left hand is holding the foreign producer and the right hand is the local line producer, service production company. And that means everything from the location scouts to the filming permits, to the working visas, to, in this case, all the COVID protocol implementations. We just finished a very complicated shoot for Netflix. It was in a remote area, sensitive area. And there was over 100 people, but again, we nearly act as a service producer, but we're not. We're a film commission, but we're really with them from sometimes even development to pre-production, right till post. And so I think that's a big differentiating factor, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the studios that do come and shoot here, well, they come. So Paramount have been here 3 times now. Netflix has been here 3 times now. So all I can say is you should try it. You'll like it.
And actually, that must also help in terms of with the local crew being used for all these big projects. To gain experience working on those kind of big films and TV series must be fantastic and really useful in terms of then being able to work on future projects.
That training is invaluable, but we're becoming to be honest, we're becoming a bit of a victim of our success in the sense that it's still a fairly recent industry, and it's growing incredibly quickly, especially now that we're building a new film studio complex, which I can talk to you about in a second.
Yeah, please.
But, yeah. So one of the big challenges is the crew base, crewing up. And it's a relatively small country, and so we've just implemented what we call a creative visa, and this is a way to start allowing foreign expertise, especially the below the line crafts, who would like to work in Abu Dhabi or who have worked here and want to come back. So basically, the creative visa it's the same as a freelance visa. And it's good for 5 years, and you can come in and out as the work commands it. So you don't have to, we understand that somebody who's never worked here and is a freelancer isn't going to pack their bags and move. So this is a way for any freelance expert craftsman or woman, to live where they live, but come and work on a work visa wherever they can. And if anybody listening to this would like to apply, you can write directly to me. My email address is, I believe, just below my screen there, and I will send you the application form.
Fantastic. And Shane, do you want to come in there as well in terms of the appeal of filming in the region and all the crew and the great equipment that's on offer? Because obviously you've been there a while, been there many years now. So tell me about the setup.
Well, I would have to say that I've filmed all over the world, and it used to be that when I first started shooting in Dubai, we used to fly everything out from the UK, and there was nothing there, very little crew, very little equipment. Now there's I'd have to say that I'd say it's a production location the equal of most places in the world that I've shot, and it's got a lot of very good high-end crew, very experienced, multinational. I mean, the wonderful thing about shooting, being in the UAE in general is that it's such a polyglot of cultures and nationalities, and so we've got multinational crew. I'd say most departments covered quite strongly. Fantastic equipment suppliers, multiples of them, all the latest toys, all the latest lenses, drones, the latest FPV stuff. So from the point of view of commercials production, for sure, or for branded content, maybe not for the big features where you need Fred North or something like that, but for most of what we do, it used to be we used to have to bring a lot of stuff in. Now it's all here and it's all available, and there's a lot of good crew. So I mean, I think that is one of the that's one of the big attractions of the UAE. And then obviously the sun shines for most days of the year. It gets a little bit hot in the summer, we all admit, but you don't see that on camera. And it's great locations. And one thing that I've noticed, and this is very much something that's been happening, on a federal level in the UAE, is there's a great support for the creative industries and a great belief in building a knowledge economy. And so there's a lot of government support and backing for our industry. And, I think that both in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi and on a federal government level, they're making it a big point. I think that, they announced a 2025 plan recently to, double the amount of people working in the creative industries, including film. And that I think that shows very forward thinking and a good supportive environment, a film friendly environment is what I would describe the UAE as.
I imagine, Ben, you'd say much the same, wouldn't you, in terms of your experiences filming in the region? Because obviously you've been over there several times on various projects. Have you encountered obviously great crew and a lot of support for what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think wherever you shoot in the world, especially on commercials where you shoot for a shorter period of time, and it's just as intense. You're shooting days, but it's for a shorter length of time, and you're less likely to bring as many international crew with you. So you rely more on your crew base and talent base locally in the region that you're shooting. And I think that with the UAE in general, it's sort of that the perception is that there's very good sort of first choice, second sort of A team, B team, I guess, locally living on the ground. But if maybe you don't get the A and B team and you're left with the C team, then maybe that's when things can get a little bit thin in terms of the talent base for local crew. So I think all the program that Hans is talking about, with extending this creative and technical visa, encouraging more people to more creative talent and technical talent to be able to work in the region, is only going to benefit the reputation of the region as a filming hub. Yeah.
And what about the infrastructure, sort of extending from that? Hans, you were going to touch on the studios. Can you just briefly mention a bit about what they have to offer?
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of ties into Shane's last remark about the weather, right? I mean, it's kind of, I'm from Montreal. I was the Quebec Film and Television Commissioner. I'm from Montreal. And it's kind of the same situation in reverse. Instead of, minus 30 is, plus 30, plus. And so it's really important to have a proper, film studio complex. And we're building one now. But with multiple different soundstage sizes for different budgets. But what's different about this complex, and I can talk about it now, is we're building two purpose-built virtual production stages. The demand we are getting, you talk to anybody in Hollywood, the supply cannot keep up with demand now. And the pandemic has changed so many aspects of our industry. Not only the way we consume content, but the way content is produced now. And, you know, and so more and more they want to be, you know, producers want to be able to film on controlled environments and be able to do their post-production during production. And, you know, and it looks like, you know, in-camera visual effects is the way forward. So we're betting on that, and we're building a very big virtual production stage. It will be perhaps the biggest in the world, and then a medium-sized virtual production stage for, you know, the episodic TV series, the mid-budget level projects. We're also building a dive tank, which is also going to be one of the biggest in the world, purpose-built, 6 meters deep, and then a multitude of, like I said, purpose-built sand stages to accommodate different budget levels.
And where will these be, and what sort of stage are you at with them?
Yeah, so we've just begun. The virtual production stage will be ready at the end of this year, the dive tank at the beginning of next year, and a couple of the sand stages as well. And it's located in Yas Island, which is kind of the Orlando of the UAE. It's the entertainment hub. It's where Ferrari World is, Warner Brothers Park is, the Formula One track is. There's 7, you know, high-end hotels, and 8 now. Hilton just went up on Yas Island. It's where the future home of 2454, which is the Abu Dhabi Media Hub, will be. And so it's 15 minutes from the international airport. So it's just the perfect location.
In fact, extending from that, I'd like to talk more about some of the great locations on offer in the region. Before we do, just very quickly, we're just going to show a quick show reel directed by Michael Bay.
Let's roll camera. Thanks for that. Let's start with you, Matteo, in terms of the locations. I mean, obviously there are so many to choose from, but can you perhaps sort of pick out some highlights and where productions, you know, are shot?
Yeah, well, yeah, as you said, it's difficult to pick one or few. I would say from the capital Abu Dhabi to Dubai, both the cities, they have great cityscapes, amazing for road and you know, car commercials or action scenes for movies. Of course, Abu Dhabi has a great desert with Liwa. Could move north to the north region in Ras Al Khaimah and shoot some amazing mountains, or go east on the east coast, close to Dubai and Fujairah, and do some amazing beach or some underwater scenarios. So I'll say there is a little bit of everything. Modern buildings are a great feature. I would say is one of the things that I see requested the most in the brief that I got presented. What makes the place somehow unique, I would say, is definitely in both Dubai and Abu Dhabi. The presence of a very strong film commission that is 100% on board with any of this production, and very capable productions, and very capable of local crew, of course. And I would also say that the locations are very used to filming and extremely film friendly. The line of communication that I have personally with most of the big chains of hotels, rather than private locations, big or small, it's really unbelievable. So great choice, I would say.
And I imagine a lot of these great locations can double for other places as well. Is that right? Shane, you were going to come in there.
Well, I was going to come in just a couple of points about infrastructure. I'm just mentioning hotels. I would just, we filmed a music video for PUBG Mobile, the video game, last year, and we filmed at this brand new hotel designed by the wonderful Zaha Hadid, called the Melia Hotel. And I think this is one of the few places in the world where we could get access to a location like that. The hotel was just about to open. But it's extraordinary architecture and very futuristic and, very Zaha Hadid. So I wanted to mention that. And one thing, just when Hans was mentioning the fantastic, what sounds like an incredible studio complex they're building in Abu Dhabi, there is in Dubai, also Dubai Studio City, where there is, a number of really large sound stages and a dive tank and, an existing infrastructure there for large studio-based productions. So between the two Emirates, we're going to be, well sorted for studio space. And I think the virtual production thing sounds like the future. And we wait to get you in out of the heat in the summer.
Chris,
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, that as speaking of locations, that so in between Yas Island, where we're building the film studio complex, and Dubai, where Shane is sitting right now, we have a backlot called Kizad. It's a huge backlot. It's 4 million square feet of land. And we have a half a dozen sets built, and we're building another half dozen. And this is also new. Everything from police station, classic sets that are often demand, airport terminals, police stations. And that is about 20-minute drive north of Yas Island, or 25 minutes from the airport. And so that is going to also expand, the possibility of shooting nearly anything in this country.
And what's the situation with that? Is that under construction? Is it ready? Is it production?
No, we already have half a dozen sets up, including a military base, including a souk, including a war-torn street, including you can go on our website. All the pictures are there. We're expanding. We're going to be expanding the backlot this year in terms of new set construction, and that's kind of in function of new projects that are coming to town, which I obviously can't talk about, but I can say a couple of them are Bollywood blockbusters that have certain requirements in terms of sets, and so we're together with the producers, we're building these things.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the Kizad, war-torn street, we shot there late last year as well, and it's fantastic because, I mean, guns and bombs and all that stuff is all very manageable there with no, no safety issues, and remarkably supportive and very good value.
There are a couple of unusual locations. I'm just thinking back to the film that we shot. Our Abu Dhabi film we shot, and there were a couple of unusual locations that we came across. I think there are a couple of quite interesting markets. There's a very good fish market in Abu Dhabi, which is a real sort of authentic fish market, which is also somewhere where you can actually get some good, it's one place you can go and eat in Abu Dhabi that we found that was quite real, really good food, really sort of, some locals eating there, and quite an interesting place, and a great sort of large interior working fish market. And we also shot, probably the strangest location we shot was a organic tomato farm, which is in the desert between, I think it's between Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And we were specifically looking for sort of real sort of forward-thinking businesses in the UAE, and one of them was an organic tomato farm, which was housed in a huge, in a big sort of hydroponic warehouse and greenhouse, but right in the middle of the desert between Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and that was a really, I mean, that was quite an incredible place that we shot. But I don't know if you remember that, Matteo. I think.
Yeah, I remember scouting for that project. Yeah, Chris, if I can.
Yeah, they supply vegetables to a lot of the big hotels in the UAE. So that was quite an interesting, unique.
Fantastic
as well.
Matteo, you wanted to come in there?
Yeah, I think another important feature to mention is the proximity of these locations is quite extraordinary. It's not only the quality that we can offer, but you could be shooting the tallest building in the world today at 7 o'clock in the morning, and in the afternoon being already in the desert, you know. So it's not only variety and quality, it's also proximity. Of locations, which is a great advantage.
On that shooting day, we were shooting this tomato, you know, in a tomato farm in the morning, and then we shot sunset scene in the desert, which, you know, I mean, it was a million miles away and 15 minutes down the road in terms of a unit. So that was quite impressive.
Fantastic. I'm conscious of time, so let's turn to some questions from the audience. In fact, Ben, funnily enough, there's a question for you here, which is related to what you were talking about. What makes the UAE interesting for you to shoot, and what are the standout things about filming there, aside from security?
Well, I guess that was you know, what I've just said is yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, that was a memorable, you know, that was a memorable experience, that the variety of locations within a small geographic footprint. So there are a lot of, we shot we shot sort of shot paddle boarders in mangroves, we shot you know, desert scenes, we shot sort of manufacturing scenes in sort of actual, you know, in aeronautical facilities. These are all sort of kind of real life places. So there are a lot of locations within the same proximity. So that sort of covers that question about locations. You know, on a more general sense, in terms of what brings productions to the UAE, I guess, you know, ultimately things in our business, as in every business, often come down to money, and a lot of the projects that come to the UAE for, you know, commercial projects would be because either the client is based in UAE, the job comes out of the UAE, or potentially you're shooting with a star who's based in the UAE. So these are the reasons why you traditionally would come and shoot in the UAE. However, if, you know, tax breaks, these projects that are being developed by Hans and the guys at the moment will inevitably bring, and the way that the UAE have dealt with COVID and are quite successfully dealing with COVID, I think we'll probably, you know, we'll probably have some, you know, quite positive reactions in terms of bringing more commercial shoots there, as well as the big movie shoots, you know, and commercials go hand in hand with movie shoots. You know, I think it's the same crews that we use a lot of the time. When the crews are on breaks from their movies, they want, you know, they often want to shoot on commercials, and it help, you know, it sort of fuels the industry. But
very collaborative. Brilliant. All right, and there's another question here from Ias Yunus asking, if an American show is planning to film several episodes in the UAE, which city should they consider, and what are the differences between Dubai and Abu Dhabi in terms of incentives, regulations, etc.? Hans, do you want to start us off, and then perhaps Shane, you come in as well?
Yeah, like I said before, you know, it's a very decentralized federate. It's kind of like, you know, Georgia sitting next to, you know, Alabama or whatever. So Abu Dhabi offers cash rebate, Dubai, and the other Emirates do not. So you know, if cost is the name of the game, and you know, you depend on the producers depending on the cash rebate, which is the same as a tax credit, to you know, to partially finance his budget. You know, he has to be shooting in Abu Dhabi. Like I said, there's certain locations that we don't have in Abu Dhabi that can be found in the more northern Emirates, like, you know, that very rugged, you know, rugged, alien-looking landscape. Like I said, if they're based in Abu Dhabi and they bring the crew and locations, we'll still rebate that, because, you know, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for them. But yeah, and there's no, you know, there's no minimum. If they want to do half an episode, that's fine. If they want to be based here for the whole series, that's fine too. You know, and we're here to help them again every step of the way, including you know, shooting the image. So I'll give you a great example. This wasn't a film, but some guy just broke the record for running from one end of the UAE to the other in 7 days. He ran across the 7 Emirates. He started at the Abu Dhabi Saudi Arabian border and ran all the way up. He, you know, somebody had to help him with the, you know, the policing escorts, the permits, and, you know, we ended up, the Abu Dhabi Film Commission were the ones that ended up, you know, helping him, you know, with his journey across the whole country, and it worked out really well. And if anybody, and you know, you can see he kept a log of a daily log. It's on Instagram, and if anybody can't find it and wants to see it, just contact us. We'll send you the link.
Fantastic. Shane, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I mean, the question again was the difference between, I mean, as Hans said, I mean, the most obvious difference is the rebate exists in a very organized fashion in Abu Dhabi, and it doesn't in Dubai. Although there's always talk about in Dubai about them having some forms of incentives, which, you know, I think are judged on a case-by-case basis. I mean, the first Mission Impossible that was shot in the UAE, they shot it in Dubai, and the second one they shot it in Abu Dhabi. So, and I think they incentivized that Mission Impossible quite dramatically to shoot. But I mean, it was a big Hollywood picture, and, you know, they were, you know, they liked the exposure. But in regulatory terms, I don't think there's any difference. As I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hans, you know, the primary, the first thing you have to do if it's a long form TV series would be to get approval of the National Media Council on the script. And I think that applies on a federal level, whether it's Dubai or Abu Dhabi. So on a regulatory basis, and, you know, permits are pretty much the same thing in both places. There's no real regulatory differences.
That's absolutely correct. I might just add that I'm not sure about the Dubai, but the Abu Dhabi Film Commission, we will pre-screen the script for you. So because you only get one shot at getting it approved by the National Media Council. And so we will pre-screen it. If there's anything we think will be sensitive or tricky, we'll work with the producer to modify any sensitive areas of the script. And we've never had a rejection so far.
Brilliant. There's another question here from Karen Coatsey, who asks, can you share what new developments are taking place with the Abu Dhabi Media Group? Hans, do you want to kick that?
Abu Dhabi Media, what? Recruitment?
No, she's put Abu Dhabi Media Group.
Abu Dhabi Media Group. Is she talking about the Abu Dhabi Media, the broadcaster? Could she elaborate?
Well, I can wait and see what response she gives to that, but let's move on to another question while she does so. Which local production companies can American production companies partner with in Dubai and Abu Dhabi? One of the concerns of the American production companies about the unpredictability of changes that can be imposed by the government in the region is a point of concern. How would you respond to that? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the foremost criteria for any physical producer, especially in the studios in Hollywood, is stability. They want to know that that rebate will still be there in a year and a half. They want to know that the regulations haven't changed. You know, they're planning 2 years in advance, and stability and security are two crucial criteria. There's never been any change. You know, the
This place
rebate
is solid as a rock. Yeah, it's very, it's super. I mean,
Yeah.
from the view of political, I mean, you know, this, I think that probably is from somebody, you know, with a media, you know, inculated view of the Middle East in a general way and thinking about, but, you know, of all the places in the Middle East, the UAE is possibly, you know, I don't know, at the risk of being contradicted by somebody, the most stable, you know, and the most forward thinking and the most liberal and empowering, you know, for our.
Let me give two examples to support Shane's comments. We have just become the 5th country, not in the Middle East, in the world, the 1st country in the Middle East to send a probe to Mars. I mean, you know, that is, you know, you can't get much forward thinking than that. But coming back to Earth, we just normalized relations with Israel 6 months ago, the first Arab state to do so. And you know, and to put their money where their mouth is, they are building, it's not just a plan, they are actually building this project called the Abrahamic House, which is a mosque, a synagogue, and a church, all in the same complex with an education center in the middle.
Wow, sounds amazing.
Yeah. And the first part of the question, you know, if he's looking for a production company to partner with, Boomtown Productions is a good place to start.
There's also another question here about crew. Are there plenty available across the whole of the UAE in terms of every single emirate, or are there particular areas, places where you need to go to get the best crew?
It's really Abu Dhabi and Dubai. It's really Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And like I said, you know, we have a priority program now to start building the crew base. And again, if anybody is interested in the creative visa, which is a 5-year freelance visa that allows you to come in and out to work, just write me at the address in the box and we'll send you the application.
And the other thing to say about crew is, the truth about crew is that there's, you know, there's lots of good crew in Dubai, there's lots of good crew in Abu Dhabi, and the crews work in either emirate. I mean, they're only an hour away. It's not like, so, you know, we would regularly, you know, bring crew down from Dubai to shoot in Abu Dhabi, and equally lots of the crew we would hire in Dubai are actually working and based in Abu Dhabi. So, I mean, from a crew perspective, it's really the same place.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think when some of our crew, we had a very good local focus puller who lived in a very small emirate that I hadn't heard of, which was right by the Omani border, I think. And
Fujairah, possibly. Yes.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. He said it was a very different sort of environment down there and quieter. And they travel. You know, I guess there's in usual times there's freedom of travel, isn't there, between all the emirates in the region. So it seems like they're diversely spread out.
Fantastic. And Hans, I was going to ask you, in terms of the bigger projects that come and film in the UAE, I know there have been quite a few in the last few years. Do they tend to use like the local crew, or do they sort of split it 50-50, international, local? What's usually the case with these projects?
You're asking me, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends. It really depends on the project. You know, if it's a TVC, they're gonna max out with local crew to max out the rebate. Because I think Shane mentioned it before, the rebate also applies to TVCs. You know, if it's a Hollywood picture, they're going to bring a lot of their experts because the crew they've been working with in other territories. So Mission Impossible filmed in 4 different countries. So obviously they're not going to change their cinematographer, you know, halfway through. So they're bringing a lot of crew with them. Bollywood also like to so the kind of top level below the line, they like to work with the same people. But in terms of the the construction crews, the craftsmen, they like to hire locally.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
sorry, go on. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, that, you know, with international commercials, very often, you know, they would bring in some heads of department, but I mean, less and less, I would say. But, you know, very often the direct, you know, international visiting production companies will bring the director, the producer, the DOP, possibly a production designer, and then they would get the rest of, you know, the rest of the team they would get locally. Although there is now in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, there's more and more, you know, top level, you know, A-list kind of DOPs based here. And the pandemic has sort of accelerated that, I would say, because a lot of them have been, you know, based in the UK and not, you know, and there wasn't a lot going on there last year, and they've come out here and, you know, they're getting plenty of work. So I think that will kind of continue, you know, as long as the workflow continues.
I think we're finding that more and more across the board in terms of, you know, especially the top technicians and you know, whether it's cinematographers or production designers. I think really, you know, people can move and work, you know, remotely very well in terms of prepping projects at the moment. And when it comes to shooting, they'll jump on a plane and travel to wherever that is, and that may be something that, you know, works to the benefit of you know, film regions and hubs that are trying to attract people to move there for the work, you know, moving forward.
Fantastic. There's another question here related to what you guys have just been talking about, actually, is for most of these productions, does the casting process for supporting roles particularly happen outside the region, or is any of it done locally as well? Hans?
Obviously, principal cast comes with the above the line, right? And you know, the one, you know, principal cast comes with above the line. You know, everything that's extras and all that. So I was talking about Mission Impossible. We had 300 extras in a couple of the scenes. 98% were local. They were from here, especially as, you know, and so the in between kind of cast, like especially the stuntmen, specialized stuntmen, especially ones that need to work with horses. You know, sometimes we'll bring him in from, you know, France or Eastern Europe, and some are locally based. So it really depends on what the casting requirement is.
And I think they cast a lot of the secondary roles for a lot of the pictures shot in Abu Dhabi have been cast in the UAE, but not the principal roles. For commercials, we cast a lot in, you know, in the UAE, and then, you know, sometimes for specialist needs, or, you know, we would bring cast from other parts of the region, from, you know, Beirut or from Cairo, and sometimes from London, and then sometimes from India. There's a lot of work done for India, as Hans knows, and a lot of, I mean, those big Bollywood pictures, they bring all the stars, but I'm not sure what they do for all the other roles in Abu Dhabi.
Well, I mean, you know, the one thing that I mean makes, you know, the UAE what it is in terms of its social fabric is the fact that you have over 180 nationalities living and working side by side. It's kind of like, you know, a multinational Shangri-La. And so you know, as more and more films become diverse in terms of their casting requirements and needs, they're finding that this is a place where, you know, they can answer a lot of those requirements in terms of racial and gender diversity. I mean, you have, and you know, again, you have 180 nationalities living and working here.
Yeah, fantastic. Good point.
Yeah. So final question then. When filming in the UAE, how important are local fixers and producers and production service providers, and especially when filming in perhaps more difficult areas?
Well, I mean, I'll take that one to begin with. I mean, you know, they're essential. You know, you can't, you can't shoot here without one. You know, you have to work with a locally licensed entity, whether it's in Abu Dhabi or in Dubai. So, I mean, fixers or local production partners are, you know, are essential. I don't think you're not allowed to just come here and shoot without one. I mean, you can't get permits and that one.
I would say though, that is true in any sophisticated production center in the world. I mean,
so
you know, like I said, I was the Quebec Film and Television Commissioner for 10 years. You wouldn't come and shoot in Montreal or Quebec without hiring a local service producer, or at least a local line producer. The difference is because of, you know, because it's still unknown territory for so many people, the UAE, the Film Commission is really bigger than most film commissions around the world. And that's because we have the specialized staff to assist in that whole journey from pre-production to post-production.
Fantastic. Ben, do you want to come in there as well in terms of your experience working with local fixers and producers?
Yeah, Hans is absolutely right. I mean, wherever you go, and you know, regardless of the size of your production, you know, you need a fixer or a partner on the ground to be your production partner. I think, you know, you select your production partner based on a number of, you know, there's different criteria. Ultimately, you need to trust them, and you need to trust them in a couple of ways. I mean, firstly, it's a, you know, our business and what we do is about logistics, a lot of it. So, you know, they need to, but there are two types of logistics. There's the logistics of actually getting something done from business affairs contractual way, and, you know, making sure that you have your permits in place, and that's where Matteo and Shane come in, and the guys that work at the commission come in and can liaise between the production and your local location owners and the permits where you know, the local authorities that you need to be signed off with. But then also you need to be working with people that are not just good logistically at dealing with your, you know, signing off your locations and helping you with your paperwork, but also who understand the film business and the creative side to what we do, because we are about the logistics, but we're about fitting logistics within the creative of what we're doing, which is something quite unique. So I think it's really important to work with trustworthy people, but also people who are proven in the film production world and have experience, you know, and who are creative producers and understand the production process very well.
Matteo, did you want to finally come in there in terms of the importance of the support you provide as a local?
Yeah, I totally agree with my colleagues. Of course, is essential. I'd like to add that compared to other places in the world, probably there are some little nuances that are extremely important in the UAE. You know, just taking, you know, thinking about what Hans said before about all the different nationalities you find in the UAE. There is a certain sensitivity that must be applied when it comes to filming. There are certain areas that are different. You know, you move from Dubai, 40 kilometers from Dubai or 60 kilometers from Dubai. There is a different kind of sensitivity that must be applied to filming and to showing up in a location with cameras. And that's when, you know, having a capable location manager, a capable producer, a capable government liaison or location fixer is extremely important. And it's not only important on how you approach the filming and how well the crew and you know, the production is going to know the territory, but how also on how is going to approach the public around the camera, not only the crew and the project itself. You know, so that's definitely key.
Brilliant. All right. Well, listen, that's been great. Thank you so much to all of you, the speakers, and thank you to attending today, and thank you to the sponsor as well, Boomtown Productions. It's been a really interesting talk. Thank you so much for all your insights. Thank you, guys.